that the former Prince Andrew used to have prostitutes coming to Buckingham Palace, and as that's not scandalous enough, the suggestion is the Queen would have known about this and done nothing about it.
Nobody was supposed to notice, but millions did. During a live TV interview that shocked the world, Prince Andrew appeared confused, sweating, and stumbling over his own words. Viewers immediately asked the same question: was he drunk? What unfolded next was so disastrous that the royal family has spent years trying to bury it.
4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then, because the Duchess was away, we have a simple rule in the family that when one's away, the other one's there. I was on terminal leave at the time from the Royal Navy, so therefore...
This moment didn't just embarrass the monarchy, it destroyed Prince Andrew's reputation in real time. It began as a carefully planned attempt at damage control. In November 2019, Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, sat down with journalist Emily Maitlis for what would become one of the most controversial royal interviews in decades. The goal was clear. He wanted to address growing public scrutiny over his friendship with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The royal family hoped that this television appearance would put rumors to rest, explain the Duke's side of the story, and help restore confidence in his judgment. Instead, what unfolded in that Newsnight studio at Buckingham Palace is now remembered as a turning point that dramatically reshaped his public life. Before the cameras rolled, the situation around Andrew had already been building for many months. Epstein had been arrested on sex trafficking charges earlier that year and died in custody in August 2019. Although Prince Andrew was not charged with any crime, attention turned sharply to his long-standing association with Epstein. Reports in major newspapers in both the United Kingdom and the United States examined the timeline of their friendship, the events that took place at Epstein's homes, and the high-profile individuals who moved in his social circle. At the center of it all was a photograph that had circulated widely, a picture showing Prince Andrew with his arm around the waist of Virginia Giuffre, who had accused Epstein of abuse and later alleged that she had been forced to have sexual encounters with the Duke. Andrew has always strongly denied this allegation. By the time he agreed to the interview, pressure was mounting. Commentators noted that public confidence in the monarchy relies heavily on a sense of dignity, restraint, and moral leadership. Any royal who becomes the focus of a scandal, especially one tied to criminal wrongdoing, even indirectly places that public trust at risk. Representatives of charities and patronages associated with the Duke expressed concern, quietly at first, but increasingly in public statements. Members of Parliament began asking questions about whether he could continue in his role as a working royal. Inside Buckingham Palace, advisors saw a moment to address everything head-on. According to reports from people familiar with the planning, Prince Andrew believed that an open and direct conversation on national television would demonstrate that he had nothing to hide. Emily Maitlis, known for her firm and precise interview style, arrived prepared with a list of difficult questions. The setting itself was carefully arranged. A grand room, warm lighting, and the prince seated comfortably, ready to present his case. The conversation began in a calm and measured tone, with questions about how he had first met Epstein and whether he regretted maintaining contact with him. It was clear from the outset that the topic was sensitive, but Prince Andrew appeared confident in his answers. He maintained that he had not witnessed or been aware of any illegal behavior during the years he knew Epstein. However, as the interview progressed, something shifted. Viewers later commented that there was a growing sense of unease. While the prince remained composed in his posture, the content of his answers and the way he delivered them struck many as unusual or out of touch with public expectations. When discussing his decision to stay at Epstein's residence in New York in 2010, shortly after Epstein's conviction for sex offenses, he explained that he believed it was the last honorable thing to do so he could end their friendship in person. This reasoning surprised even those who had followed royal affairs closely. British and American news outlets noted at the time that such a justification seemed disconnected from the serious nature of Epstein's criminal history. The tone of the interview became even more striking when Maitlis asked about Virginia Giuffre's allegations. Prince Andrew responded with a level of confidence that many found jarring. To underline that he could not have been with Giuffre on the specific night she mentioned, he gave a detailed account of his whereabouts. He said he had taken one of his daughters to a birthday event at a Pizza Express in Woking, a suburban restaurant chain best known for family-friendly meals. This detail, presented as a key alibi, immediately stood out to viewers. Some journalists later noted that public figures often struggle to remember specific dates from many years before, yet here was a prince, recalling the day with absolute certainty because, he said, it was such an unusual outing for him. Although he insisted this made the date distinctive in his memory, critics questioned whether this would hold up in any investigative context. Another comment that drew intense scrutiny was his explanation that he did not sweat at the time, supposedly due to a medical condition linked to his service during the Falklands War. He used this claim to cast doubt on Giuffre's description of him sweating while they were dancing at a nightclub. Specialists and military figures later expressed doubt about the medical reasoning offered. While news organizations reported his full explanation, the reaction from the public was largely incredulous. Throughout the exchange, what troubled many observers was not only the content, but also the tone. While discussing extremely serious matters, the prince, at times, smiled or spoke with what appeared to be confidence bordering on dismissal. Major broadcasters and newspapers highlighted this contrast in their coverage. Commentators argued that when faced with allegations involving abuse victims, one might expect a more direct expression of empathy, or at least a clear acknowledgement of the gravity of the wider situation. Yet, during the interview, Andrew repeatedly emphasized his own inconvenience and distress, rather than focusing on the suffering of those harmed by Epstein. The absence of expressed sympathy became, in the eyes of many, one of the most damaging elements of the appearance. It is important to emphasize what credible sources do and do not say about this interview. Many accounts discuss the prince's awkwardness, unexpected statements, and lack of sensitivity to the broader context. Experts in communication and public relations analyzed his body language, noting how he avoided certain question topics or paused for long periods before responding. Television critics described his manner as stiff or strangely confident, considering the severity of the circumstances. Social media users created a flood of memes and commentary that drew attention to his answers and behavior. But none of these reputable commentators claimed he was under the influence of alcohol or any other substance. The perception that his behavior was unusual does not translate into evidence of intoxication, and so, reliable reporting has focused not on speculation about what might have affected his behavior, but on the impact his words had when many believed he should have approached the interview with greater humility. By the time the broadcast ended, it was clear that the situation had not improved for the Duke of York. Instead of calming public concern, the interview sparked global headlines that questioned his judgment more fiercely than ever before. Within days, organizations he represented began distancing themselves. Newspapers described the interview as a public relations disaster. Inside the palace, advisors quickly realized that the intended strategy had backfired. Within a week, Prince Andrew issued a statement announcing that he would step back from public duties for the foreseeable future. This moment, historians now argue, marked the beginning of a new and profoundly difficult chapter in his life. In the weeks following the Newsnight interview, reaction did not fade. Instead, public interest intensified, and attention shifted to what the appearance revealed about Prince Andrew's decision-making and the environment that had allowed him to believe the interview was a sensible step. Analysts from across the media observed that he did not appear fully prepared to understand how his answers would be interpreted by the wider public. In both the United Kingdom and the United States, commentators continued to express disbelief that a member of the royal family had faced such serious questions on camera without the kind of awareness or sensitivity typically expected from someone in his position. This raised a critical question. Why had the interview been allowed to take place in the first place? Reports from journalists close to the palace later described a sense of determination from Prince Andrew himself. He was said to be keen on clearing his name and believed that by answering questions directly, he could put rumors to rest. A number of advisors, including those with deep experience in public relations, reportedly warned that such an interview would be extremely risky. Some accounts suggested that these individuals had advised waiting for legal developments or limiting his statements to written communication. However, other voices within the palace hierarchy, including individuals who had worked closely with the prince for years, supported his confidence and believed that a demonstration of openness would serve him well. The build-up to the interview therefore became a study in how reputation management can go severely wrong when it lacks outside perspective. Royal experts noted that public sentiment had already been shifting before the broadcast, particularly among younger audiences who did not share the automatic deference once shown toward the monarchy. Against that backdrop, an interview that was not extremely cautious and empathetic was always going to be high risk. Yet Prince Andrew entered the conversation with what many viewers felt was an expectation that simply presenting his account would be enough. The interview itself was not broadcast live, but it was recorded shortly before airing. This meant that advisors were able to preview the footage. According to reporting from those familiar with the events, the reaction internally was one of growing alarm. When editors reviewed the final cut, they concluded that the material spoke for itself. There was reportedly no effort by Buckingham Palace to request changes, nor to prevent it from being shown. It aired unedited. That decision is now widely seen as evidence of how strongly the prince believed his performance had gone well, despite the reactions of observers who disagreed. In the immediate aftermath, broadcasters and newspapers around the world led with headlines that reflected shock and disbelief. This was not only because of the subject matter, but because the public had rarely, if ever, seen a senior member of the British royal family attempt to defend themselves from allegations of this nature on primetime television. The family is known for its reluctance to give personal interviews, especially those that involve cross-examination. Traditionally, royals allow official statements or palace spokespeople to communicate sensitive information. The Newsnight interview represented a complete departure from that strategy. As criticism grew, the focus broadened beyond the specific remarks made in the interview. Commentators examined the wider implications for the monarchy itself. A core expectation of the royal family is that they remain above controversy and represent stability. Even when individual members face personal struggles, the institution seeks to maintain an image of quiet professionalism. In this case, however, the Duke of York's involvement in a scandal tied to a convicted sex offender presented a reputational threat that could not be easily contained. Media outlets highlighted how charities and patrons associated with the prince began reconsidering their partnerships. The classic model of royal duties relies on mutually reinforcing prestige. A charity benefits from royal support, and the royal benefits from association with good causes. When Andrew became a figure of public concern, that structure rapidly began to change. A number of organizations publicly announced that they could no longer be connected to him. Others chose to quietly remove references to his patronage on their websites. Some staff close to these decisions told journalists that they felt they had been left with no choice. As one charity representative stated in a widely quoted remark, "Safeguarding and public trust are essential responsibilities, and they could not risk damaging the very communities they sought to support." This withdrawal was not based on legal findings against the Duke, but on the public perception that he had not reacted appropriately to the concerns raised. Pressure mounted from within the royal household as well. Senior members of the family were said to be anxious to stop the situation from overshadowing the monarchy's duties. King Charles, then the Prince of Wales, was known to be particularly focused on modernizing the institution and preserving its long-term credibility. Prince William, too, was reported to have taken a strong view behind closed doors that the interview had caused serious harm. The consensus that emerged was that Prince Andrew could not continue in his role representing the crown. The announcement that he would step back from public responsibilities came quickly, and he confirmed that it was done with the Queen's approval. This was a highly significant step. His official role had been a core part of his adult identity. For decades, he had attended state functions, international events, and military celebrations. His career in the Royal Navy, including service during the Falklands War, had shaped much of his public image. To relinquish these duties, even temporarily, signaled a drastic shift. It also raised new questions. Would this be a short break from royal life, or a permanent change? Attention turned once again to the consequences of the interview itself. Public relations professionals were invited onto television panels to explain how such a moment could unfold. Many said that the appearance seemed to lack basic crisis management strategy. They described it as an example of someone trying to win a debate rather than show accountability. Lawyers pointed out that speaking so openly before any legal process had concluded could introduce complications if further questions arose from. Authorities in the United States Even those who wished to give the prince the benefit of doubt admitted that the interview had been carried out in a way that did not reflect an understanding of how modern audiences interpret televised behavior. As the analysis continued, another conversation emerged about empathy. Survivors of crimes connected to Epstein watched the interview closely. Advocacy groups said that they were disappointed not to hear more acknowledgement of the harm caused. In their statements to reporters, they emphasized that public figures who had been associated with Epstein should focus first on supporting victims, regardless of whether they were personally accused of wrongdoing. The absence of such emphasis became one of the most frequent criticisms of the interview. Meanwhile, public opinion was shifting rapidly. Polls taken in the days after the broadcast showed a dramatic reduction in confidence in the Duke of York. A majority of respondents said they believed he had handled the situation poorly. Only a very small proportion said they felt the interview had helped to clarify matters in his favor. This change in public perception also arrived at a time when the monarchy was already navigating generational change and discussions about its role in a modern society. The royal family is aware that its survival depends heavily on continued public support, particularly among younger citizens. Analysts noted that this scandal risked undermining trust at a moment when stability was needed. Within a matter of weeks, it became clear that the Newsnight interview did not simply fail to improve the Duke's situation, it reshaped it entirely. International broadcasters replayed the most striking moments, and documentaries began examining the deeper implications. Streaming services commissioned films and dramas about the events, demonstrating how deeply the interview had become embedded in the public consciousness. Instead of being seen as a confident defense, the conversation was widely studied as a cautionary example of what can happen when a public figure under scrutiny approaches a serious matter without a full understanding of how it will be received. The consequences extended beyond media attention. Further investigations and lawsuits continued in the United States relating to Epstein's activities. While Prince Andrew has consistently denied all allegations against him, the association alone ensured that he remained a person of interest in the wider story. His decision to speak so publicly about the matter meant that any new development would bring his interview back into focus. News channels would revisit clips, and experts would once again analyze his expressions and answers. As this new reality settled in, Prince Andrew largely disappeared from public life. He stopped attending most official engagements. Meetings with supporters and charitable partners were cancelled or reassigned to other members of the royal family. The shift was particularly notable during major events like Trooping the Colour or Remembrance services, where previously he had appeared in a military uniform among senior royal ranks. Now, he was either absent or positioned quietly away from the spotlight. Looking back, many observers concluded that the interview represented a misunderstanding of public expectations in the 21st century. The monarchy no longer operates in a world where a royal word is automatically taken without question. Audiences expect transparency and accountability. When a figure in authority appears to show neither, the response is powerful and immediate. By relying on his own confidence rather than a carefully structured communication strategy, Prince Andrew found himself at the center of an intense and lasting reaction. Even now, years later, the interview remains a significant reference point in discussions about the royal family and how it grapples with the complexities of modern media and public accountability. It serves as a reminder that actions intended to defend a reputation can sometimes result in the opposite effect, and it has shaped Prince Andrew's role in the monarchy in a way that still influences how the public sees him today. As media attention expanded beyond the immediate fallout of the Newsnight interview, another force began to shape the direction of Prince Andrew's situation, increasing political and legal pressure from authorities in the United States. The death of Jeffrey Epstein earlier in 2019 had not ended the investigations surrounding his actions. Instead, attention turned to the many people who had known him and spent time in his company. Prosecutors, lawmakers, and legal representatives of victims all emphasized that the pursuit of justice would continue without Epstein himself. They argued that those who may have witnessed or understood elements of his behavior still had information that could be important. As one senior legal figure publicly remarked, "Cases like this do not disappear simply because the central perpetrator is no longer alive." Prince Andrew, because of his long social connection to Epstein, quickly became one of the most high-profile individuals associated with the story. The FBI stated publicly that they wished to speak with him. The United States Department of Justice confirmed that they had made formal requests through the British legal system. Commentators pointed out that this put the British government in a delicate position. Extradition was not being sought, and there were no criminal charges against the Duke of York. However, refusing to assist could potentially damage international cooperation efforts. On the other hand, the British government does not compel private citizens to give evidence to foreign authorities unless strict legal conditions are met. Prince Andrew's shift from a working royal to a private citizen therefore placed him in a grey area that legal experts debated at length. Victims' representatives were vocal in the American press. They emphasized that cooperation from anyone who had interacted with Epstein might help clarify what happened behind closed doors in his various residences. They also argued that withholding information could be seen as obstructing progress. Lawyers working with these survivors made repeated statements that Prince Andrew had a moral responsibility to speak with investigators, regardless of whether he believed he could provide meaningful details. In their view, any effort from someone once close to Epstein would demonstrate support for those who had been harmed. Prince Andrew's legal team responded cautiously. They said that he had offered to cooperate as a witness and that any discussions should follow proper channels. At the same time, news organizations in the United States reported that prosecutors felt the Duke had not engaged to the extent they expected. This disagreement led to public comments from legal officials, who claimed frustration at the lack of movement. These statements strengthened the perception that the conflict was not only legal, but also political. Members of Congress began taking an interest, particularly those serving on committees related to justice, oversight, and human trafficking. In the United States, congressional committees have the power to hold hearings to investigate matters of significant public interest. Although they cannot compel a foreign resident to appear before them, they can issue formal requests and express political intent. Several representatives suggested that testimony from Prince Andrew could be important to their work. They emphasized that the focus of such inquiries was not limited to individuals who had already been prosecuted. Instead, the goal was to examine the wider network of people and organizations that enabled Epstein to operate over many years. One proposal that gained attention was the publication of documents known informally as the Epstein Files. These included court records, sealed testimonies, and confidential materials collected during legal proceedings. Advocates argued that full release would provide transparency. Opponents warned that privacy concerns and the rights of people not charged with crimes needed to be protected. The debate was not solely about Prince Andrew, but his name was frequently referenced during discussions regarding the significance of releasing such documents. Commentators predicted that if these files became public, they could lead to a new wave of scrutiny and questions. International media highlighted how unusual it was for a member of the British royal family to be drawn into a dispute involving American lawmakers. Historically, the monarchy has remained distant from foreign political conflicts. Now, analysts observed that Prince Andrew's personal actions had created a situation where the royal household was being discussed in the context of US legal accountability. Newspapers described this as a moment that tested the boundaries of constitutional roles. Unlike elected officials, royal family members are not expected to explain themselves to foreign governments or appear before foreign legislative bodies. Yet this was exactly what some in America hoped to see. Political implications grew even wider due to the involvement of public figures beyond Prince Andrew. Jeffrey Epstein's social connections had included business leaders, academics, and politicians. Among the names frequently mentioned in the press were individuals with influence at the highest levels of government. This created an atmosphere where investigations were not only legal inquiries, but also matters affecting reputations and alliances. Commentators noted that as long as the Epstein case remained active, the possibility existed that new revelations could emerge involving figures from both sides of the Atlantic. Prince Andrew, while a prominent name, was not necessarily the final focus. Throughout this period, Prince Andrew remained largely out of public view. His absence at major royal events drew attention each time it occurred. At national ceremonies, his place in the order of precedence was quietly adjusted. Broadcast commentators interpreting the visuals explained that, while he retained his royal rank by birth, his public role had effectively ended. Legal and political developments abroad reinforced that his withdrawal was not merely symbolic. Instead, he had stepped into a new reality where scrutiny continued without the protection offered by royal duties. The royal family itself faced its own dilemmas. The Queen, still carrying out her responsibilities with consistency and dedication, was said to be deeply saddened by the situation. Close royal watchers noted that she had always maintained a strong personal bond with her son, having shown support for him during military service and beyond. Yet at the same time, she had to remain conscious of the monarchy's broader role. Every decision she made could be seen as a signal about the institution's values. This tension became evident when, in early public statements, the palace's language shifted from defending Prince Andrew to expressing concern for Epstein's victims. Media analysts said this shift was essential to ensuring the royal household did not appear insensitive to the suffering at the core of the scandal. Legal experts in Britain pointed out that the Duke's situation raised broader questions about accountability. Although he denied all allegations made against him, and there were no charges filed in the United Kingdom, public opinion increasingly measured legitimacy not only by legal standards, but also by standards of transparency and conduct. Citizens questioned why someone associated with such serious matters should still hold honorary military titles or roles within ceremonial organizations. This debate would intensify further in the future, but the early arguments reflected growing discomfort with allowing a royal title to maintain prestige in the face of a reputational crisis. Meanwhile, in the U.S., lawmakers continued to push for information. Media coverage emphasized that they wanted to demonstrate commitment to justice, especially toward victims who had long felt overlooked. Some politicians described Prince Andrew as a person of interest, while others framed his involvement more broadly, saying that anyone with knowledge should help clarify what happened. These viewpoints were regularly repeated in news broadcasts, adding to the mounting sense that the Duke's silence or limited engagement would only deepen suspicion. Communication specialists observed that Prince Andrew's team faced a nearly impossible challenge. Any statement could reignite controversy. Remaining silent allowed speculation to fill the void. The Newsnight interview, intended as a definitive explanation, instead left more questions unanswered. Every subsequent development referenced that earlier moment, treating it as a baseline for judging any future remarks. Videos of the interview continued circulating widely online, often edited into short clips that highlighted the most surprising lines. This repeated exposure meant that the perception created during the broadcast did not fade with time. Advocacy groups continued applying pressure too. Survivors of Epstein's crimes urged political leaders to ensure that accountability extended as far as necessary. They expressed frustration that powerful individuals could appear insulated from consequences. News organizations covering these calls to action linked them to Prince Andrew's situation, even when his name was not explicitly mentioned. The core idea was that no one should be beyond the reach of justice. The presence of a royal in these conversations underscored the scale of change in public expectations. As months passed, it became increasingly clear that this was not a temporary story. Prince Andrew's association with Epstein, the consequences of the Newsnight interview, and the ongoing demand for cooperation from American authorities had combined into a long-term shift. It was no longer a matter of isolated decisions or statements. Instead, it represented a complex intersection of legal systems, public sentiment, media dynamics, and institutional responsibility. By the end of this phase, the attention surrounding Prince Andrew had evolved far beyond where it began. What initially appeared to be a controversy focused on a single interview had become part of an international pursuit for answers, one that repeatedly circled back to a core question: how should a modern society expect figures of influence and privilege to behave when confronted with serious allegations, even indirectly? It was a question with no easy answer, but it ensured that the story would continue, driven by forces that extended far beyond Buckingham Palace. Time has passed since Prince Andrew's Newsnight interview first aired, yet the consequences of that single television appearance continue to shape his public role and the broader perceptions of the monarchy. What might once have been viewed as a short period of controversy developed into a long-term shift in how the Duke of York is seen, both within the United Kingdom and abroad. The fallout did not simply involve legal questions or media discussion. It opened a wider conversation about public trust, personal accountability, and the evolving responsibilities of those born into positions of status. One of the most defining changes following the interview was the steady removal of roles and honors that Andrew had held for decades. When he stepped back from public duties, his military affiliations were initially left untouched. Over time, however, public sentiment became increasingly uncomfortable with a figure under such intense scrutiny, continuing to hold ceremonial positions tied to national service. Veterans groups expressed concerns about the message this sent to serving personnel. These discussions eventually contributed to a decision that those roles should be returned to the Crown. Long-standing organizations that once proudly displayed the Duke's name as their patron gradually shifted their focus to other members of the royal family, who could represent them without the weight of ongoing controversy. As these developments unfolded, the monarchy found itself adjusting to a changing landscape where accountability played a stronger role in shaping public expectations. Commentators highlighted how the royal family, although steeped in tradition, has needed to respond to modern attitudes. Citizens today often seek transparency from those in positions of influence. When a public figure appears reluctant or unable to address concerns raised by society, trust can erode quickly. In this context, Prince Andrew's shift away from official duties was seen by many as a necessary step to maintain confidence in the institution as a whole. The media, both traditional and digital, continued to play a significant role in keeping the story alive. Documentaries revisited the events surrounding the interview and the larger circumstances of the Epstein case. They presented timelines, testimonies, and expert commentary that further shaped the way people understood the situation. Dramatized portrayals, sometimes featuring well-known actors, also gained attention. These productions reached audiences who might not have followed the news closely, but were interested in the behind-the-scenes accounts of how major decisions were made. By presenting interpretations of key moments, they added a narrative dimension to real-world events, influencing how viewers remembered them. Social media platforms amplified this effect. Short clips from the Newsnight interview remain widely shared. Many users comment on the expressions and gestures displayed during key answers, often interpreting them without full context. This circulation of concise, sometimes simplified moments reinforces impressions that may not reflect the entire conversation, but still capture the public imagination. Analysts noted that the digital era can make reputational recovery more difficult. A single televised moment, once part of a broadcast that might have faded with time, becomes permanently accessible and repeatedly referenced. While the media perspective remained active, legal matters abroad also continued their course. Statements from authorities in the United States reiterated their desire to obtain information regarding Prince Andrew's knowledge of events involving Epstein. Although the Duke's legal representatives stated that a process existed for cooperation, the matter did not appear to reach full resolution publicly. Each new update related to investigations into Epstein's network often led journalists back to the Duke's situation, ensuring it remained in the public eye even during quieter periods. This ongoing attention created new challenges for the royal family. Key members of the monarchy have increasingly focused on charitable work, community engagement, and addressing issues such as mental health and environmental sustainability. However, whenever a major development involving Prince Andrew occurred, it sometimes overshadowed announcements aimed at promoting positive initiatives. Media outlets often prioritize stories that attract the most public curiosity, and the unresolved nature of Andrew's circumstances ensured that headlines could resurface unexpectedly. Within the family itself, shifts were also taking place. King Charles, who assumed the throne after Queen Elizabeth II's passing, has been associated with efforts to streamline the monarchy. His approach emphasizes a smaller group of working royals carrying out official engagements. In that context, there was little expectation that Prince Andrew would return to a prominent public role. The Duke's limited appearances have been carefully arranged, usually in private or personal contexts, rather than as a representative of the crown. Royal commentators observed that this reflects a recognition of how deeply the interview and subsequent events affected public trust. Despite these changes, conversations continue about what the future might hold for Prince Andrew. Some voices argue that time may eventually bring a degree of acceptance, and that private service or charitable involvement could help rebuild aspects of his reputation. Others believe that the situation has altered his role permanently, and that a return to public duties is unlikely. The uncertainty reflects the fact that reputational matters do not follow a fixed timeline. They depend on how events unfold and how public attitudes evolve. The impact of the events surrounding Prince Andrew also raises broader questions about how society views institutions like the monarchy. For many people, royal figures are expected to embody integrity and restraint. When actions fall short of those expectations, the consequences can extend beyond the individual in question. Supporters of the monarchy recognize that challenges must be addressed openly to maintain its relevance. Critics suggest that the incident demonstrates why institutions built on inherited status face difficulties in moments demanding accountability. Through all of this, one theme remains clear. The Newsnight interview is regarded as a defining moment. What began as an opportunity for Prince Andrew to provide clarity ended up reshaping his public identity. It influenced political discussions, legal conversations, media portrayals, and public perception. The long-term consequences illustrate how carefully individuals in the public eye must navigate modern communication, where every word and expression is subject to intense analysis. Even today, years after the cameras stopped recording, the interview is regularly referenced in discussions about public relations missteps. Communications specialists often cite it as an example of how confidence alone does not guarantee effective messaging. They point out that understanding the emotional environment surrounding a topic is just as important as presenting facts. Audiences respond not only to what is said, but how it is said, and whether the tone matches the seriousness of the situation. In this case, viewers interpreted the Duke's delivery as lacking the empathy expected when addressing matters related to abuse survivors. Prince Andrew himself has kept a low profile for the most part. Occasional photographs appear in the media, often taken during private outings or at family occasions. These images tend to spark new waves of commentary, demonstrating how public attention remains fixed on his status. Whenever significant family milestones occur, discussions arise about whether he will attend and, if so, how visible he will be. It is widely understood that such appearances are considered carefully to minimize any disruption to the royal family's intentions for the event. Legally, Prince Andrew has consistently maintained his innocence in relation to all allegations made against him. He has expressed regret for his association with Epstein, acknowledging that knowing the convicted offender had been a mistake. These comments have been documented in statements released through official channels. However, many observers believe that the original interview overshadowed later attempts to clarify his position. The strong impressions formed during the broadcast have proven difficult to shift, in part because they were reinforced by the subsequent restructuring of his public duties. Looking ahead, the question remains how this chapter will ultimately be viewed in history. Analysts suggest that the episode may be studied not only for its immediate consequences, but for what it reveals about the relationship between public figures and accountability in a changing era. The monarchy, though deeply rooted in tradition, must respond to the expectations of the people it represents. This situation illustrates how those expectations are evolving. The public places a high value on sincerity, awareness, and responsibility. When these elements appear lacking, even a single interview can create a lasting impact. The story has also influenced public understanding of how accusations are handled in high-profile environments. The experiences of victims and their pursuit of justice remain central. Advocacy groups emphasize that focus should always remain on those who suffered harm and those who may help ensure that such crimes do not go unanswered. Discussions involving Prince Andrew are therefore connected to a much larger conversation about victim rights, institutional accountability, and the long-term effects of misconduct. While no one can predict the final chapter of this story, one thing is clear. The events that followed the Newsnight interview have fundamentally changed Prince Andrew's role in public life. What was once intended as a step toward clarity instead opened years of complex developments that continue to unfold. The legacy of that televised appearance will likely remain part of the historical record, reflected in future examinations of the royal family's challenges during the early years of the 21st century.